Hello everybody and welcome to the Data Developer Showcase. My name is Sebastian James. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for Cook County Government. It has to be one of the largest and longest titles in the world, but it means I get to have a lot of fun with new technology, great new toys, and about a year and a little bit more than a year ago, myself and my CIO, Greg Wass, bumped into this thing called Open Data, and it's been wonderful ever since. We have been thrilled to be able to pull Cook County into the data age. We've created open data sites. We've posted over close to 300 data sets online. We are working with the City of Chicago and the State of Illinois on various data projects. Last month, Cook County led the city and the state in creating a regional metro data portal, metrochicagodata.org. That's metrochicagodata.org if you want to go there. But it's been a great ride. And this week is Open Data Week for Cook County. The Cook County Board of Commissioners proclaimed that at an April board meeting. And to that end, we have been releasing new data sets this week. We've been having webinars left and right. Yesterday we had a great webinar on government data and digital entrepreneurship. Tonight we have our data developers webinar, and tomorrow, just around lunchtime, we are going to have another webinar, which is basically a guided tour of the metrochicagodata.org site. Please go there; it's a great place to go. And the county, the state, and CMAP, which is a great data regional data organization, are going to share their visions of where they will be, where they want to be data-wise over the next few years. So, to that end, we're going to get started with tonight's presentation, Developer Showcase. And Dwayne, if you can turn on the PowerPoint. Here it comes. All right, there we go. So, joining us tonight are Stuart Townsend. Stuart is with DataSift. DataSift is a British company. Lots and lots of work with big data, lots and lots of work with social data. Stuart is not going to join us live. He's not going to join us live as a presentation. He sent us a video. This week, Stuart is one of the organizers of Big Data Week. You may have heard about it if you've been tuned into open data or big data. Lots of stuff going on worldwide. Stuart right now is the guy that needs the most sleep on the globe. Probably since last week, he has been in nothing but press conferences, hackathons, and other events. I spoke with him earlier today, and God bless him, he's doing a great job. But Stuart will be sharing with us a video on big data as how DataSift does it. We also are being joined with Jake Porway of DataKind. Jake is going to share with us using data for humanitarian purposes. I'm really excited about that. Next up is going to be Elizabeth Park. Now, Elizabeth Park was a competitor in Apps for Metro Chicago. Apps for Metro Chicago was an open data competition that the city, the state, the county, and a few other foundations sponsored over the course of the summer. Elizabeth's I Find It Chicago app was an award winner, so she's going to take a few minutes to walk us through how I Find It Chicago works. The last presenter is Marcello Bonatti, a name I love. Love that name. He's with Capstone BI, and I've exchanged a few emails with Marcello, and I've had a chance to talk with Marcello a few times. And over the course of those short discussions, Marcello has shared with me a great education app that he's building for the state of Arizona. He's told me that he's worked with the real estate agents in Northern Illinois to build a fantastic database that makes it easier for them to service their customers. And he has a 16-year-old and a 5-year-old. The man is busy. But he's going to share with us some really cool things that he's doing, and looking forward to that. Once again, I'm your host, Sebastian James, Deputy Director of New Media. So let's go to Stuart Townsend of DataSift.
So, good evening, Chicago, and thank you for letting me present this evening. Apologies I can't make you there in person, or actually dialing remotely as well. I'm actually hosting day 4 of Big Data Week, and it's going really well. We've had 600 attendees over the week up to now, still got more events to go, and of course we've got the hackathon as well, which you know we're all part of, which is fantastic news. So I'm just here to tell you a brief couple of minutes around DataSift and who we are, what we do. And I'm going to apologise for the poor quality of the video and maybe the background noise as well, because we actually have, I'm at an event, I'm getting ready to host it in about 5 minutes' time. So, yeah, a little bit of noise. As you can tell, big data is really a growing market and very key. And what we're seeing is a massive growth on a daily basis. So we actually take in and process 2 terabytes of data a day into our Hadoop infrastructure. So we take social data, such as Twitter's Firehose or other data feeds as well, and we put them through our platform in real time and add augmentations to them. So we term those augmentations as things as adding gender detection, link extraction, social authority, sentiment analysis, entity extraction, topics and categorization. And we allow customers to then filter against that and all those different elements in real time. So you may want to look for somebody that's buying a coffee in Starbucks in Chicago in a certain location. So we let our users do that and understand who those people are, where they are, what they're doing, what's going on, and give some engagement value as well. But the key for me about this term big data is sort of very generic and wide open within our organisation, within DataSift itself. The key is about insights and actions. So how can we give access to our users the ability to run our platform and gain engagement and understand the volume of reach of their data, of the maybe of a brand, but key is actually the actions and insights. So by delivering out that data, that can then be mined to understand is there a buying pattern or a signal in there for the financial market. So financial services is very strong in this space. So is a sentiment in the market against a certain brand or against a certain stock ticker. So we have lots of consumers that do that. The way you could use the platform is around brand monitoring, consumer tracking around the sentiment of your product, new trend spotting, see what's bubbling, see what's coming up, see what's hot, customer engagement strategies. How well are you engaging with your customer? How successful are you with responding back to that customer? There's a whole raft of things that you can do. So the platform itself is in real time and allows you to take multiple data feeds, which you may already be working with, such as Twitter and Facebook, but then put it through our platform and filter and do that in real time, and then extract that through one API. So you can connect and consume that stream in real time, but just through one API itself, which is amazing, because then you get unstructured data, filtered, augmentations added, value, and then returned to you in a structured format that's simple and easy to use. But it gets better, because if you don't want to take it through an API, we have a platform so that you can record that data. So you can take that data as an output in CSV or JSON format. So you don't have to be a developer to use the platform. You can get started very simply and start using the platform from day one in 5 to 10 minutes, and start getting data out, start mining that data as well. So in terms of the instance of that data, so it's high quality. The filtering capability is powerful and in real time. There's no licensing aspect because you sign a license, you return that. So from a legal aspect as well, the license you sign protects you because you're getting that data, and you know that you can reuse it within the terms of service. We have a back-end scalable storage solution, so you don't have to worry about storing the data if you don't want to. We can do that for you and then allow you to consume that when required. So, if you want to follow any type of data, you can follow by event, by geolocation, by sentiment, by topic, by authority. It's unlimited. And it's unlimited how you can actually search that data as well. So, by filtering, by having this deep, rich filtering engine, you can extract those insights and information. So I just wanted to give you a very rough, brief overview and a very high-level overview. So the company itself was launched in 2010 by Nick Halstead, and he really believed in allowing data to be open and structured, so that anybody could get access to all the social data that's happening and being driven, but it's restricted in terms of its growth and ability for people to get access to it. So you can come into our platform, put $10 in, and start consuming social data within 5 minutes by building a very simple stream. And in terms of sort of the whole sort of big data space, so obviously we play that in that really well, because I was saying about the terabytes that we manage, and a lot of our customers as well. What we found from Big Data Week is that the challenge is not the storage of the data or the volume; it's actually gaining the insights from it. It's actually gaining the action from it as well, the velocity. So we've always had a problem around storing vast amounts of data itself. So data warehouses have been around a long time. But how do you correlate that data? How do you get open data sets, as we've got a president that we're talking about? So, take those open data sets and layer them on top of social data or on top of the master data, so you get a bigger picture, a bigger perspective. And that's what I believe is a challenge that we're facing at the moment. And we've got this, this pivot at the moment that people are realising that, but not understanding how we can do that. So from our side, as DataSift, we can help give you that social data in a structured format with lots of augmentations and value added on it. So if you were, I'm going to give you the last scenario now. If you wanted to check Starbucks out and who was there buying coffee and look at a trend, but then also mirror that with point of sale and look at the point of sale data and look if there was some actions in there, what triggered that actual, that spike in social sentiment. Were people happy, and that's why we got increased sales? Or was it people were happy because it was a book signing by a very famous author and it decreased? There's aspects around that. There's news diffusion as well. So, within the platform itself, you can use our historical service and go back through 2 years of Twitter data and look for an instance of, say, an action or a campaign or something that happened, and look for the velocity of the news. So, did that news actually start with a particular person? Was it released before the embargo? We had an instance with RIM recently where we tracked the news diffusion, where it actually started and where it spread over a period of time. It's quite amazing to see actually that news being released and dispersed, and then did it have an effect on the market. So we measured the sentiment of the market against that and looked for the spikes in volume. So this is the power of the DataSift platform. So what I suggest you do is go to datasift.com, or you're always more than welcome to email me. My name is Stuart Townsend, so stuart@datasift.com for more information, and I can take this further and do it in a more professional and polished and slick manner than what we've presently got set up, which is a camera set up in a room with an event happening outside. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the web seminar and the rest of the speakers. I know you've got some great lineup happening there, and it's been a pleasure talking to you all. Thank you.
All right, so Stuart Townsend and DataSift. Fantastic stuff that they're doing there. That sounds like one of the most powerful data platforms that I've heard about or read about. As a marketer, I would definitely want to reach out and make contact with Stuart. Now, next up, we have Jake Porway. Jake is one of the founders of DataKind, as you can see, using data in the service of humanity. Now, Jake is a data scientist with the New York Times. He's working on what the news will look like in 3 years. And as he shared with me, get used to Twitter. And I said, okay, sounds good. I'm already a Twitter addict anyway. So Jake is going to tell us a little bit more about DataKind. And Jake, if you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you very much, Sebastian, and thank you very much for having me tonight. It's not often that I get to talk to a room full of people who are both so good at data and also so good at thinking about ideas for government and community. So I kind of feel amongst my people here. So thank you very much for having me speak tonight. So as Sebastian as you mentioned, I am the data scientist at the New York Times Research and Development, but I actually want to talk to you guys a little bit about DataKind, which came out of some realizations from working in that data field. And I want to talk a little bit about the data-driven world. I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but data drives almost all of the decisions that we are making. I'm sorry, guys, I'm hearing some stuff in the background. Are the slides coming through okay?
Yes.
Everything okay on your end? Okay, great. So I want to start off just by talking about how data is driving all of our decisions. Everything from what movie we watch on Friday to what kinds of ads we're shown to who we should be friends with on Facebook. And so it's an incredibly exciting time because data is beginning used to help us make smarter decisions about how we drive lives in really fundamentally new ways. And behind this, of course, are the data scientists, usually called data analysts or statisticians. These are the people who are using data to help us make better decisions about how we live our lives. And what you all know from especially being in Chicago, data scene there, is that the data community is an energetic community. We're people who don't just work on data 9 to 5, work on it on the weekends as well. We go to hackathons on the weekends. I know being in Chicago and being in the tech scene, I'm sure you guys see a ton of hackathons. And I remember my first hackathon that I went to was this really exciting moment because I was sitting in this room, with all these people who have the most advanced machine learning skills I'd ever seen, the greatest coders, the sharpest data analysis. I couldn't wait to see what we were going to come up with. It's going to be so amazing. It's going to be so world-changing. We're going to use our skills to come up with something that was going to really shift what people thought. And the stuff that we came up with was so unfulfilling. There's some apps to help you park your car, some other apps that would let you find an iPad a little cheaper that was near you. And don't get me wrong, these are fantastic apps. These are things that I use all the time. But it just felt like if we had all these amazing skills to work with data, the kind of stuff they're using on the Hubble telescope, we should be using it for more than just making sure that we know what we want to go to on the weekend. And now you guys are probably intimately familiar with the idea of sort of hacking change. There's this trend where people said, okay, well, let's try to get a little more meaning out of this. Let's start taking open data. Let's take international open data. Let's take government data and let's start hacking on it. And this is a huge step forward. This is really amazing, right? You're seeing these groups come together to say, we don't just want to build the next pillar. We want to build something that lets people communicate with their representatives. And that's a really huge step forward. And at the same time, one of the things you see with a lot of these events is that the people in the room who are working with the data are not necessarily the people who are going to be using the results. And because of that, you get a lot of people solving their own problems. And so what comes out of a lot of the apps competitions, at least that I've seen, are a lot of taxi finders. Because what is a problem is finding a taxi, as a developer, and that may not be the same problem that somebody who's looking for low-income housing might need. So I don't want to get down on these events because they're awesome and they're huge. And we're about the Big Data Week hackathon coming up this weekend. We're very involved in it. It's going to be fantastic. And we're so excited that Cook County is using its data to help improve EPA estimates. That's exactly the kind of thing we want to see come out of these. But we felt like there was one other voice missing in this conversation. And the voice missing was community organizations, the independent sector. So governments and social organizations are often left out of this conversation. Now, it's funny giving this talk in Chicago because in other cities this is much more true. I think everyone I've talked to in Chicago has been like, oh no, we know exactly the organizations and they were all up on Hadoop and data science, so you guys are actually really leading the cause on this. But one thing we see a lot of the time in the independent sector is that these guys are spending all their time trying to improve the world, improve the public good. They often, whether they know it or not, are surrounded in data, right? So these guys have data about surveys that they collect, project data. There's data, even if they're not collecting it, that comes from governments and open data. And I don't have to tell you guys that. You guys are helping provide the data that they can use to better perform their mission. So there's huge amounts of government data and third-party data, like World Bank data, available to them. And on top of it, there's more data exhaust coming from the products they build for their projects. So this is more relevant perhaps internationally, but cell phones are becoming huge tools in the developing world and in the world of development, wherever you are. And all of these create data that could help you understand more about your mission, could help you pivot in all these smart ways. So there's all this data about internal data, open government data, new data from projects. It's so exciting, and yet no one is really able to look at it. And understandably, a lot of community organizations can't afford data scientists. You know, it's very hard to compete with people like Google and Wall Street. It's understandable that there's not a lot of resources for that. And so all of this potential, all this great data that could be used to help maximize social impact just goes to waste. So, on the one hand, we have people who are really good at looking at data and are spending their spare time looking at data and analyzing data, but they don't have a lot of social outputs for it. And on the other, you have social organizations trying to improve the world who have tons of data and no one to really look at it. So I hope you guys are asking the same question I was, which is, can we get these guys together? And that's exactly why we started DataKind. DataKind is a nonprofit that connects expert data scientists with social and civic organizations to help them maximize their impact. And we help people on a huge range of involvements, everything from long-term fellowships to month-long projects to weekend events. Just getting together for a weekend to help people think differently about data, which is one of the reasons that I'm on this call tonight. And I really want to emphasize that DataKind is seeking to be really someone that addresses the entire data pipeline. So we don't want to just be monitoring and evaluation. And we want to be the people who can say, those tests that you collected, those surveys, they're statistically valid or not. How are you going to store your data? How can you build a visualization? How can you really assess whether you're having an impact or not? So we want to deal with the entire data pipeline, from collection to management, analytics, and beyond. And so we feel that this is a really exciting initiative because by bridging these two communities, you give data scientists a chance to have social impact, you give social organizations a chance to maximize their impact, and in the process, we all get to live in a better world. So I want to show you guys an example of what one of these relationships looks like. And as I mentioned, one of the ways we work together is on these weekend events, which we see as these sort of souped up hackathons. We call them data dives. And the focus is around bringing 2 or 3 community organizations with targeted data problems to the event. And at these events, the organizations pitch their problem. We work with them in advance to help them understand what the problems could be, help them think differently about what they could do with their data, and then they come pitch it to the audience. We invite volunteer data scientists who come and kind of vote with their feet, work with those groups over the organization to help them out, and then at the end of the weekend, we present the results. And one of the other things we really try to emphasize here is, unlike traditional hackathons, the result doesn't have to be an app or a piece of software. It could be an analysis. It could be a visualization. It could even be a consultation saying, that question you wanted to answer, you couldn't quite do it with your data when we looked at it, but here's some data that you could use to do that, or here's what you could think about next time. And so we really emphasize that it could be a range of data outputs, and also we really want this to be a collaborative event. So we want organizations to come and not just throw their data over the wall, but to sit alongside a data scientist. So as we're working through these problems, people are working together. The organization's saying, we want to answer this. The data scientist is saying, you can't necessarily answer that, but you could answer X, Y, or Z. The organization says, oh, X sounds good, let's look at that, etc., things like that. So I want to show you an example of what some of this looks like really quickly in my last couple of minutes. We worked with the New York Civil Liberties Union at an event here in New York, and they wanted to know if the NYPD was using racial discrimination. Awesome, very thorny question, but nevertheless, we thought we would help understand that problem a little bit for them. And they actually have a great problem because, as many people know, there's actually great data around this question. So the NYPD has openly available stop and frisk data. And this data is amazing. There's 111 variables they record every time someone gets stopped and frisked. Where it happened, when it happened, if there was an AK-47 involved, if the person liked Justin Bieber, there's just huge amounts of information there. And so we're in a great position because they have a great question and they've got data to answer it. They just don't have the capacity, so let's answer it. Well, here's the stop and frisk data. And so I want everyone in that room to just sort of shout out or raise your hand if you can tell if the NYPD is using racial discrimination. Yeah, so me neither. Like, that's... And the problem is, for a lot of social organizations, this is probably as far as you get. Even if you have open data, where do you go next? If you even got this into your computer, which is already a challenge, what are you going to do? So we worked with them and said, let's see if we can, make this a little more sensible. And this is what one of our volunteers came up with. And this is a map of all the stop and frisks in 2010. And what you begin to notice about this is that you can see things, right? You can see these hot spots up in Spanish Harlem. You can see the hot spots in downtown Brooklyn. And those are things you just wouldn't see in that opaque block of data. And what's more important about this than helping answer a specific question is that visualizations like this can help organizations ask questions. So you can imagine you're watching this map and you see it light up at the end of the month. You may go, oh, why is it that it got bright? Oh, does NYPD have a quota? Well, that would be a very big violation of civil liberties. Now, for the record, we did not see that in the data, but you could imagine starting to see those patterns help not just answer one specific question, but ask others that are crucial to your mission. So NYCLU is able to use this to continue to look into this in ways that they can understand that data now. I'll show you two other quick examples. We worked with DC Action for Children that collects an index on child well-being in DC. And they said, we've got all these data sets from the government, but we don't even know where to begin. Some are in neighborhood format, some are in zip format, zip code format. We just want to find some way that we can understand all that data together. So again, this is what the data begins looking like. And our volunteers built this visualization, which is an interactive visualization that lets them now navigate by county the various information about child well-being. So you can see average family income, unemployment, demographics. And what DC Action for Children is now going on to do is building this out into a bigger tool with more indicators and actually starting to do the analysis on this now, hiring data scientists to help them see what are the interesting trends in here. Because a tool is one thing, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you still need to go that last mile. And then lastly, the United Nations Global Pulse came to work with us in New York, and they had done this really cool study where they had a global well-being survey. They asked people around the world, write in on your cell phone how happy you are. And it was a fantastic achievement for technology because they suddenly were able to take a pulse of the world, say, how is everyone feeling? Hey, Globe, how are you? And that's pretty amazing to be able to do that. But they were then stuck with the same problem the other organizations were, which is they had this. And they didn't even know the answers to the most basic questions like, who answered our survey? Was it evenly distributed across the globe, or did it end up just coming from Ohio? We didn't really know. So our volunteers got together and built this visualization, and I don't know if this shows on the video or not, but what it showed for us was where people were responding to this survey over time. And so the UN was immediately able to get a sense of where people had responded. They had started in India, and then it had spread out. And they got a sense of where they needed to target in the future. Oh, no one's writing back from Chad. I guess we didn't do a good enough campaign there. And so this is a very simple tool. I have to emphasize that. Anyone who does visualization or data analysis would say, hey, I could do that. I could do that in a weekend. And yeah, exactly. Like, you can do that. It's very easy for data scientists to do these kinds of things, but it's transformative for these communities who may not have those technical skills on staff. And this visualization, simple as it may be, was so important, it got presented at the United Nations General Assembly on a talk about why data needs to be thought about in doing development going forward. And so these are tools that are not just answering one question from a weekend, but are helping answer questions and change the way people think far into the future. So I could go on and on about the crazy things that we've seen, the wonderful things that we've seen at these events. Everything from nonprofits working together, to governments opening up their data, to the people, the majority of the groups, who have gone on to work with our volunteers beyond the weekend, even without us being involved. And that's what we really want to see. We want to see that change happening in the way people think about data. So I was saying I could go on about that, but I'm not going to, because what I want to tell you guys about, what I'm so excited about, is that we are, for our next event, we're coming to Chicago to do one of these data dives. So we're thrilled to be coming to Chicago because Chicago is such a data-heavy city and such a tech and social-heavy city that we know there's going to be a lot of huge work done by people who are really great on the data side and really great on the social side. There's information here on this slide. You can go to our site at datakind.org or the shortened link dwb.cc/CHI Data Dive to learn more about that. There's hopefully some information there maybe going up around this conference as well. But I want to tell you guys that I'm super excited because, again, we invite organizations to these events. And the events that the organizations we're working with at this event are the American Red Cross. They have a lot of questions around whether they can do predictive analytics on where there's going to be fires in various neighborhoods. So they're very interested in finding out what other data is out, how they can improve their mission. We're working with Children's Memorial Hospital, who has too many good projects. We're actually trying to narrow it down because they have everything from where red camera lights should be put in to stop speeding, to working with Project Ceasefire, to a whole number of health initiatives. So we're going to have really great projects from them. And we're also working with Enlace, which is a lot of community building on the ground. And we're still in discussions about working out their projects, but they have already come up with a huge number of really great ideas, and we're very excited to be working with them about that. Now, that alone would be an amazing event. We have 3 incredible organizations who have high impact in the Chicago area, who have data and just need more help from Chicago's data community to look at it. But we're very excited to also announce that at this event, we're partnering with the White House and data.gov to actually bring more data to these events. So we're working specifically with safety.data.gov and a member from the Office of Science, Technology Policy and Department of Transportation, because they've collected this huge database of safety data. And it's from Health and Human Services to NOAA. It's a great safety database. And we find at a lot of our events that organizations have questions that we could answer if only we had more data. A lot of times they haven't collected all the data themselves. So the White House is at this event and is helping us plan these projects in advance because they're able to offer that data that the federal or local or city governments, like people like you guys, and thankfully have made available for things like Metro Chicago data, to feed that into the projects of the social organization, so that you could say something like, hey, Red Cross, you're trying to answer this data about fires, or answer this question about fires. We have information about building codes or business licenses that you may not have known about. Oh, how could we bring that in? We could do so much more with that. So by bringing those communities, the open government, open data communities into this, we bring more data to the social side, and we also make that open data usable. It doesn't just sit on a website or in a PDF. It actually gets brought into the hands of the data scientists who know what to do with it. The community organizations are going to use those results. So I'm rambling far over time. I want to end one last thing and say, while we're looking for people to join this event, we're also looking for a special role of people in data ambassadors. These are people that are like liaisons between the organizations and the data people. They help us vet the problems ahead of time, and they work as project managers throughout the weekend so that people aren't duplicating efforts, they keep people on track. So if you are listening to this and you're somebody who is very sharp about data and really interested in social causes and wants to think about planning those problems and helping manage, please get in touch with me directly. We're in those planning stages now, so we could really use some sharp data do-gooders. So I want to thank you all for giving me this chance to talk about the event. We are full steam ahead on what's going to be an incredible event, and what we would love is for all of you to join with us. Come on down. It's going to be the weekend of May 11th to May 13th, hosted at the wonderful 1871 co-working space, and we can't wait to be helping make a better Chicago and a better world with all of you. So thank you very much.
So we just need Jake to turn his up.
Yeah.
Jake, go ahead, turn yours off, and then it'll. All right, Jake, thank you very much. That was enlightening, and I'll be there on one of those days. I guarantee.
Excellent.
All right. So thanks to Jake, and now we're moving on to our next presenter, who is Elizabeth Park from I Find It Chicago, and I yield the laptop.
I'm not Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there. There you go.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Park, founder of I Find It Chicago, and I wanted to thank Jake for doing his plug because I wasn't sure going about the open data event, but I guess you sold me on it. You're a really good evangelist, so thanks. I Find It Chicago is a result of the open data contest here in Chicago.
Hold on. What do we?
It's going to go up to the monitor itself, not the stream. It's going to die in a minute. I don't know why we had these problems. It's the first time I've ever seen it. But the monitor itself will die.
That's all right, but we'll still be streaming.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be fine.
So
All right,
I'll click it.
keep going.
Okay.
So let's pull up her slides so we can keep moving.
Which won the Apps for Metro Chicago community round back in September. And it also received the State of Illinois Innovate Illinois Award and received special mention by Governor Quinn in his state address. So I'm going to be speaking from a data perspective, but more of like a data tourist, as I'm not a social scientist. I don't have a programming, a development background. But what I do have is like in terms of social change, I'm committed to that. But I have a huge respect for what data can do, but also user interface and usability issues. So I can speak to that a little bit. One of the reasons I think that the I Find It app got a lot of attention, as it's a free Android app, is that it flies in the face with a lot of perceptions of who deserves technology and who can access technology. So a common myth, there's a common myth, and then there's a new reality, which is the poor don't have access to cell phones and smartphones. And depending on where you live, you see a lot of Boost, Cricket signs, and those companies often sell Android phones that aren't on contract. So before we developed the iFindIt app, we kind of talked about, well, what the data sets were and who would be using the app, and really what the need was. And so we focused on the Android, as that would be available to a lot of people who couldn't afford a contract phone. Another reality, and it's germane to Chicago, but definitely could be extrapolated to the rest of the United States. Heartland Alliance statistic is 1 in 3 Chicagoans is living below the poverty line, and so when we talk about the poor, the working poor, the middle class, there is a lot of blurring going on in terms of people who could afford a contract phone, and people who are using cell phones to basically use it for all kinds of things. 73% of adults in poverty have cell phones, and that's back in 2010, so I can only imagine that has increased greatly. And 40% of smartphone users with incomes less than $30,000 use smartphones as a primary source of internet access. So, these are things that, like, you look at the statistics, but like in Chicago alone, after talking to a lot of people in nonprofits, they basically said, if you don't work in this field, you don't really understand how important the cell phone is becoming. And so it's with that understanding, I went pretty confidently forward with this project, even though it seemed like every week I was confronted by someone who said, do people really have cell phones, or do people have smartphones? So, I thought it was amusing, but if anything, it drove me to really to try to actually show that I could create something that could have a use. And it's not only in Chicago. There's a lot of attention that's taking place nationally on a federal level, and I just wanted to speak very briefly. I know a lot of people are aware of this contest that's headed by the VA in an effort to really address the homelessness that's the homeless rates amongst veterans, as well as just the issues with veterans coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq, not having homes and not having jobs. And so there is federal interest in mobile solutions for underserved populations like homeless vets. And there's an active contest right now where there's a call to developers, designers, to create a new mobile app that is scalable to homeless people in need of services, caregivers who support them, and essentially anyone looking for local resources within their community. So it's with that sense of, you kind of, from my perspective, I wasn't getting a lot of positive feedback that this idea really had, there was a lot of interest in the underserved populations using mobile apps, but the fact that the VA is putting millions of dollars into trying to like empower individuals, it speaks to the fact that things are changing at a really quick rate, and there are tons of opportunities for developers to get involved. I'm just diving into the iFindIt app, which just to back up in terms of the iFindIt team, just so, as I said before, I'm not a developer, I'm not a designer, but I really appreciate simplicity. And it all started when I talked to someone at a WIC center, and because one of the data sets was women, infant, children data on the clinics in Chicago, and I called her and I said, well, I'm thinking of doing something listing food pantries. What do you think of that? And how do you go about helping moms? And it was like almost immediately her feedback was, when a mom comes into our office with kids, she's not just looking for food sources, she's also struggling with housing as well as like medical care for her kids. So as you can see, it's 3 tabs, and it's like broken into food, medical, housing, and so that's kind of the interface. And we borrowed from best practices like Yelp and Google Maps, so that you could toggle back between filter and list. And you know, we put the first iteration, we put over 2,500 listings from Chicago resources, both nonprofit, such as the Chicago Food Depository, Feeding Illinois, tons of other government resources such as the free medical clinics. So it's been free in the Android store. I find it Chicago since September. And some of the things that we built into the app was the filtering system, and that is because we kind of made a leap of faith here in just basically assuming that it didn't matter really necessarily who was using it. We could have made two different apps, one for a person who was in an emergency situation, the other one for social workers. But we really didn't want to create that kind of division, assuming that, you know, a person might want a level of detail, such as because we tossed in farmers markets that accepted SNAP and food pantries, we allowed people to kind of filter, and this is just something that, you know, so far we haven't had a ton of, you know, I haven't been marketing it actively, but the downloads don't necessarily indicate that these filters are the filters that are imperative. So I would say, you know, in giving advice to anyone, of course, the lean way is best, but when you, once you launch something, it's always good to kind of question whether or not those features are a little bit like overkill, or, you know, are you creating the app, the simplest app, and then, you know, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of throw in all the features all at once, or iterate simply and then build upon what your users ask you. These are just screenshots of some of the layout. If you were to look at any of the shelters or, you know, food pantries, you would see it on this geolocation. So you'd see it on the map, and then you could quickly pivot to the detail. So in this case, it's a Logan Square Wicks Clinic, and it calculates the number of miles away it is. It gives you the address, the phone number, and on the very bottom here you can see I have the payment method. So anything that like the government or social agencies would want to use as like maybe referral only, or women, there were some homeless shelters that were women only, that we could add those kind of detail. Also, I felt it was really important because this was not just for those in need. This is also for those that would want to help family members or, you know, friends, that there would be that social media sharing component. So we added that as like you could basically do what you can easily do on Yelp, which is send the address of a restaurant, but here would be sending or texting the address of the food pantry or the medical clinic. So we were trying to incorporate what you would think, any other widely used app would use. So some of the challenges that came into play, and I'll just speak from my perspective since I was doing a lot of the data scraping, is that when it comes to a merging of nonprofit data as well as government data, at least for now, it's very manual, and I know that this isn't a surprise what I'm saying. It's like we're all finding that the viability and utility of your app is going to really be dependent on how robust the data set is, and that manual data scraping is very costly. And because I really wanted to make sure that you know, really wanted to dig deep into it, I took on a lot of the manual tests of scraping data, and I lucked out as well. So I found Feeding Illinois. I found a list of 1,000 food pantries. And the thing is, the fact that I found it by accident by Googling, I think it speaks more to this need to have this uniform platform, because you don't want to just happen upon data accidentally, and that's not a very sustainable model. But in this process, you know, I've talked to a lot of people from the city level as well as the state, and you know, the lack of a standard database for all of these data sets kind of promotes redundancy amongst agencies. So that's a critical challenge, and that there aren't really any APIs or web service to access real-time data. And that's something that I originally wanted with the app, is that once you know where our food pantry or shelter is, what's going to make you come again? And my analogy is we keep on going to the Weather Channel because we know that that app is going to serve up the most up-to-date weather information. So this is something that I definitely want to address in the second iteration. So those are some of my goals, is to increase user base. And then, which leads, this transitions right into the future of open data and iFind at Chicago. And it's basically, one of the things about real-time data is that it's great if it's available, but you have to figure out how to patch into it. And I think what I came across, this is a great learning experience for me, is that I was just wondering, well, why aren't nonprofits entering this data themselves? And as Jake was saying, they're often more concerned, you know, understandably so, for just keeping the lights on. So is there a way for governments to be involved where there's more of a carrot stick incentive? How do you motivate partners to collaborate and update the information on their own? iFind at Chicago, I've been talking with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. They have a great initiative this summer where they're trying to get moms to easily find meals for their kids as, you know, school is out. And so I'll be receiving more data, which will just make the app more robust and hopefully more attractive to more people. But what my next project really is, how do I put the data that is really now kind of static and on Google Docs into a cloud, and allow for partners to maintain the data as well as for me to quickly access it. So sometimes I forget to ask for help, but I have it here underlined. We are looking for technical partners, so I'd love to partner with some data scientists and programmers, developers, because I really, just the traction that we have received and the attention we've received for iFind at Chicago tells me that we have touched a nerve. People are asking questions of me every day of how it can be expanded. So I know that there is interest, and I'd love to be able to scale more quickly. So, you know, I'm available. Anyone can write me an email or follow me on Twitter. I really am. I'm quite passionate about this project, and like to just give special thanks to my development team and the iFind It team, Laura Gunther and Mike from LTech Consulting. And here's just a list of some of the folks in Chicago who have really stepped up to the plate and been very courageous in really seeing the potential for mobile apps and what they do. And again, I would strongly recommend for those who are kind of, you know, tiptoeing into this and hesitant, that don't think that they have the technical skills to do this, is to be engaged and participate and get involved in. I mean, if you need a deadline, a contest is like the best thing, because especially if you've got other things going. So I would really encourage people, if they're passionate and they respect both design and data, to start getting involved. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now coming up, Mr. Marcelo Bonatti with Capstone Business Intelligence. Marcelo, let's get your slides up. And get you on your way. There we go.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I've been working with big data and data for the past 25 years as a consultant on a different side. But there's big information. With big data comes big responsibility. So when we present it and we look at the Netflix and some of the different sites, which are corporate sites, there's a lot of information that was available to private organizations, and they paid a lot of money to delve into that data and find information or insights about that information. From the standpoint of the general end user, or the government's coming up with big data and educating people on how to present federal, state, and local government information, putting that data out to the public in the concept of big data. It's big change of what it was big times ago. So there's a lot of excitement that's happening in terms of how we present and how we look at this data and information right now. The audience that I had set something out is one of the tools that we did is I went back and I did work at Microsoft, and we collaborated with about 6 or 7 partners throughout the Midwest and the US. And we went to Microsoft and we looked at what kind of tool sets were available out there for people, for the general people and general population of people out in government, local, and different areas to use. And the one significant area that came back is, hey, everybody's familiar with Google Docs, with Excel, and some of the different things. So we created, based on one of the Microsoft technologies, a tool set called, and talking about analytics, Power Pivot or Analytics for Twitter. That being said, jumped in here a little bit of that. I go into the big definition of big data. What is big data? And if we ask 100 people what big data is, you're going to have 100 different answers. But if we summarize that, it's massive amounts of interlinked information. So information is coming from your regular databases, information is coming from social media, from all different types of organizations. So what happens when you start taking all this aggregation of big information and you start throwing it together? Well, we're going to have the challenges as data scientists and data miners look at that information. What is important to me? What makes sense? What is the good data that I can use, store, analyze, and what's garbage? How do we get rid of it, and how we process? And furthermore, what do we store? What do we need to store for how long? As a government, we look at all the information. There's healthcare information, the healthcare information, like people in hospitals, data sets about patients, electronic records management. All that information exists out there. But if we look back at the source of information, sometimes you got providers and you got insurance companies, and they look at data in a very disparate, non-uniform way. So big data needs to be brought together in a fashion that people can use that. And you want to bring and visualize a lot of information in all the different levels so you can enable people to make sense of that information. Information is only usable if you can transform data into information into knowledge, and this knowledge into insights that are relative and pertinent to what you do on your day-to-day basis. So the nonprofits working together, they need to know information that's happening in their local area, and information that's working in the state area, and then on the large scale for government on big relief areas. The Red Cross program is a great one to look at predictive analytics to see what kind of response time they're coming in there. I was fortunate to work on a data set, a large data set for a rescue organization out of Utah, and they work in conjunction with the weather elements in public data service, and they see what hurricanes hit. And by the time a hurricane hits any location, they already have rescue and supplies and food and delivery services going to those areas and delivering their information. Their data set was so rich in information that Walmart purchased that data set and started supplying their logistics in their stores with milk, water, and for crazy reason, strawberry Pop-Tarts. Phenomenal information that says people, whenever there's a hurricane or something of that nature, comes in that way. The reason I'm here today is to talk about the product of what we've done, and we put it out there. The product is called Analytics for Twitter. It is available for free, and this is, I no longer work for Microsoft, so full disclosure is very important to present. We took a tool set and we put it out there, and we gave it for free. The code base, it's put in Visual Basic, it's in C# and all the ways. It's open and available for everyone to play with. And we just gave an example of the power of just an Excel spreadsheet in Office, in an Office tool set within Excel, with a tool called Power Pivot, and we analyzed the stream of data that was coming in from Twitter feeds. It's important when we look at governments how people perceive governments, how people perceive actions, how things are done. Cook County, in this particular county, I like to reward to say Cook County has a lot of challenges in the past with references to what has happened to data information and keeping things close or in the Chicago way. Well, right now, we just sharing the data, the opening the kimono, and the best way to share and to make things visible is transparency and open the data. So I commend Cook County on the presentation of the data and sponsoring the big area. One of the big impacts of social media is that it impacts perception. How many times have we gone into a situation where we had a bad customer service experience? And I know people are on Twitter, people are on Facebook, or all types of social media, and it really impacts perception. So companies are aware. I had a client one time that they sold baby formula, and somebody found some animal parts in the baby product. Well, within 10 minutes of the news coming out public, millions of tweets got shown about that particular product, and hey, this is impacting the product, and it changed the companies and its perception to the entire world. So a company that was known for having great products now all of a sudden is like at risk. People are not believing its products. We look at Johnson & Johnson, all the baby products with Tylenol. Their level in terms of brands in the world, they were some of the top ones in the world. Problems with the data with baby products, that fell down. So social media and the interactions that people have with social media, they affect and interact perception of things. So it's very important to understand what people are talking about. Whether you're a group that's offering public services, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a government organization, what are your constituents? What are the people that really use your information? What are they talking about? What's important to them? What are the issues of importance? Again, on a local side, I might want to know what's available for food for kids. Elizabeth was basically saying, what food for summer when school is not available. But on a state side, there might be different programs that exist, and how do you interact with them? How it's important. For moms, that information might be the most important information. They want to feed their kids. For a state person that has access to food and information, well, how do we get those two together? It's very important to deliver and bring that information together. And who are the biggest influencers of a particular cause? That's a very, very big thing. And when you look at the Twittersphere, or tweet as a general practice, who is making the biggest impact when it comes into a cause in specifics? What kind of comments? Who's the guiding force? Because that person basically is the source of that information, whether it's positive or negative. You can basically come and help and disseminate information. And when are they communicating? If this is something that's happening, if you make an announcement at 10 o'clock in the morning, are people talking at 10:05, 11 o'clock? How long is that information lagging? So that's the whole purpose. And one of the greatest challenges, and we talk about data and data scientists or data analysts, is what's the tone of that communication? When we look at the blogospheres, when we look at tweets, we need to attribute a positive or negative value. Are they saying something that's good or bad? Is this topic good, bad? Are we doing a good job, a bad job? Are we failing or not? So how do we attribute tone to that information? And furthermore, the biggest question behind all the data is what can we do? Data, it's useless if you don't take it and make it impactful and useful. You have to take in data and make it actionable. So if you know that there's no food in location A and there's plenty of food in location B and C, well, how are you going to get the food from A and B? Who are you going to get to information? That's the power of data. Today, with open government, with all levels of government putting information out there, it's going to be enabling social organizations, government to work together. And one of the big things when we look at data, and Jake, you're going to agree with me, people believe that it's their data, so they hold very dearly to their data. That's my local state. They don't want to share it. They make naming conventions, and that's how you refer to data, metadata, very difficult to understand. So the open data initiatives in all the different levels, the idea is to bring data to the people into a common language that everybody can understand and make sense and make it useful. So that's the last point in the bullet is what can we do with this data? That being said, I wanted to present the tools that a lot of people already have in there. If you work at government at any level, it's likely that you have some kind of version of Microsoft Office. So I put this out there. It's called Power Pivot Analytics for Twitter, and you can download and install on your machine. And I can actually showcase this. If you could show me for 1 second how we switch over.
You can get into Excel.
Yes. than when the Excel spreadsheet is.
Oh, that's right, okay. Let's go.
So early in the day, when I sent the spreadsheet out to Sebastian, he goes, "Whoa, you know." The question, and I like that. The idea of coming back and taking a tool set that people already have. So let's just enable the access on information. So when the invitation for this hackathon got presented out there, we gave us some hashtags. We have OpenGov, we have Cook County, we have big data, and some of the different areas that existed. So I took those hashtags and I put it into the spreadsheet. And we started looking at the amount of tweets that existed on each of those particular areas. I don't have the data set built into here. So we look at the data. The tweets are by day, and we only took a data set, a sampling of 5 days, and we had a total of 961 tweets. We had 431 retweets, and a total of 689 retweets of all the information that was put into the different areas. We also wanted to identify some of the top hashtags, and guess if we look at the data set when we look in here, the top hashtag that we looked at is OpenGov. Information is publicly open. Also look at the time of the day by the day. When was the biggest time announcement? Whenever we had a press release about this particular data, the hackathon, you know, in the beginning of the data sets of the 4 days to start tracking, there's not a lot of action. The second the press release came out, and about the same time, we start spiking and getting big data out there. When we look at the data set as a whole, you know, we looked at the time of the day, and then we have the different spikes per se. And we also look at the types of tweets, which were the positive, the top tweeters, and we identify who are the top mentions and who are the big sponsors of the different area. We also clicked at who are the top tweeters for each one of the specific areas, talking about how information were coming in there and what they're talking about. One of the biggest challenges that we have when we deal with with tweets and things in the blogosphere, especially big data, and we're looking at large amounts of data, is how do we assign tone? How do we measure tone? So I spoke to some of the folks in our office that really work closely with Twitter, and they found out that one of the worst possible events that you can have is a hashtag fail. So we attribute a value of that to a -10. And then we said one of the best experiences is amazing for different words, and we have to create the data set in there. So take this data tone dictionary and we apply to the tweets, and we see the tone, and we're able to measure tone. And this is, again, just a sample. We did this for organizations in a 3-day period, just as a test to show the capabilities of a product. There's no charge for it. You can go out there, you play with it, and a lot of people say, "Hey, Marcello, you're kind of crazy. You're giving the source code." Yes, I want people to take this information, use it on the hackathons. And if you've never played with big data, if you never played with data, take it, play with it, experiment with it, break it. Always go back and learn how to use it. Because you can point this at any data source that exists out there. There's a CSV file, there's an Excel spreadsheet, it's a publicly hosted text file, and you can make your own data. The reason why we put the source code, we put information out there, is so that people can understand how we structure and how we get the different data. So let's go back to the tone investigation when we looked at the tones and scores of the information. The biggest positive tone that we found to this particular set of information was talking about big data and open government. So of the 931 tweets that we received, a lot of the positive ones were talking about open government and big data. And there's some negative ones too. And it's important to always look at when you're doing something that is right, it's important to continue doing it right. When you're doing something that is not right, it's also important that you know about it, because awareness makes a big difference. So that's how we assign tone, and we went back, and a lot of people come back to me and say, "Well, how do we know if the information is not, if somebody said, I just failed my math class?" Well, we actually give you the tweeter, the tweet, the query, the user, who the person was, the type of tweet, the tone. A lot of the tones here, as you can see, are fairly neutral, and the tweet content of the body, so you can make that sense of the information. So again, very simple tool set provided for you to play with data and evolve data to the next level. So I'm going to come back to the next point, and I'm not going to talk about how vendor specifics are trying to present big data to the end users, but it's an exciting time right now for government, for public organizations to work together, and organizations that are providing those hackathons are a great example of how you can dig deep into the data and make an impact in society. For me, who have worked with data for the past 20 years, this is one of the most exciting periods in my life. As Sebastian was saying, I have a 5 and a 16-year-old. It's a big difference in our lives to what kind of schools, where they're going, what kind of food are they having in school, what kind of subject that they're taking and learning and in the day-to-day. So it's very important. Data is a very important aspect of my life, and there's a lot of it out there. So with that being said, I'm going to respect everyone's time, and I'm going to close out my presentation and bring it back to Sebastian. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, fantastic. To the guys at Radian 6, I'm sorry, I might not be a customer. I might just stick with what Marcelo has and just keep rolling from there. So if I don't call you back, it's not personal. Okay, so we have come to the end here. So let me say thanks to a few people. Once again, first I want to thank Tony Preckwinkle, Cook County Board President. Without Tony, none of this would be happening. Her commitment to transparency, accountability, improved services leads us to doing things like this, pushing it out to the public. Once again, all thanks to Tony. I want to thank Greg Wass, our Chief Information Officer for Cook County. I want to thank Dwayne McCollum, the man behind the scenes, making all of this happen. And we want to thank Mike Majewski at Polycom, who's sitting at a console right now, telling us we're getting a bunch of viewers, but I still want to know exactly what that means. Is a bunch 50? Is a bunch 200? What is that? And we want to thank Jerry Connolly with Polycom. Without those two, none of this would be happening. Watch for the video of this at datacookcountyil.gov. As soon as it's ready, we will post it to the front page of the site so you can watch it and enjoy it. Send it to all your friends. Hashtag it, tweet it, do whatever you need to it. I'll find it in Marcelo's Twitter Analytics Manager. My name is Sebastian James. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to Jake. Thank you to Elizabeth. And thank you to Marcelo. And good night, everybody.